Hello, Professor Rai. Welcome. Can you hear me?
Hi, Alvin. How are you?
I'm doing very well, sir. How are you doing?
Good, good. Good to see you after a long time.
I know it's been a while. How have you been? How have you been?
Good, good, good.
And so to get started, there you are with 25 years, in both corporate and academic life. You've been at Tata Steel, institutions like XLRI, short stint at SDA. So can you just tell us how did you stumble into academics? How did that happen?
Okay, so it wasn't really stumbling into academics. It was something that probably I had always had at the back of my mind. So I became an engineer not because I wanted to, but because those were the only options which were told to me, like a typical family in UP, that you either go for engineering or medicine, and therefore I became an engineer. I loved working with Tata Steel, and I grew there as a person. But I realized very early that I did not enjoy working with machines so much as I did enjoy working with people. And therefore, and Tata Steel was an amazing company that allowed me that kind of leeway to do things. So I used to conduct quizzes, I used to conduct antaksharis despite not being a good singer. I used to host things. I used to do choreographies, produced and directed a couple of documentary films, stage shows, theater, etc., etc. And and also my mountaineering, which is something that I picked up there. So as it happened, I was sitting on the top of a Himalayan mountain when I had this moment of epiphany, where I figured out what I wanted to do with my life. And that was to help other people realize their own potential. So I used to do a lot of writing also while I was working with Tata Steel. And one of the things that a local newspaper had started was an agony uncle column, which I used to, at that age, write.
Okay.
And people would ask for all kinds of questions. And I realized that, I probably understood people better than people around me, because those people would then come back and also express their gratitude of me having helped them. And I realized that I would want to continue doing this to help people realize their true potential. So that was the primary reason why I decided to look at, okay, what can take me there. So the first thing that I actually thought of was to write a book a la Marx is something which changed the way 50% of the world thought, but clearly people were not much into reading even at that point of time. And therefore, I realized academia was possibly one way of reaching out to more people. And, I was also, as I said, I was writing, and I was also writing on certain topics which were related to the youth. So, in fact, I don't recall the name of my column right now, but it had something to do with Yuva. And that was so I used to write two columns, one in English and one in Hindi. And the Hindi column was directed towards youth. And again, many people used to write to me saying that, I'm writing about pertinent topics, and that it's actually helping them. So there was this combination of figuring out my vision, the quest for knowledge, the feedback that I was getting, and possibly, something I had in my mind about influencing the thought process of people. Since if you see my background, I create amalgamation of ancient wisdom with modern knowledge, and then try to propound thought which I believe is more inclusive and more equitable. So the combination of these 3-4 things prompted me to come to academia.
Very interesting, Dr. Rai. I mean, I don't know anybody who might have been an agony uncle before 30. That's what I'm assuming. I mean, and that's very fascinating, because sometimes, it's those small stories that sort of show you sometimes how ahead of the time you were. And so I'm curious about, how did that even happen? I mean, there's somebody, I would say, relatively inexperienced to be an agony uncle. So how did that happen?
I don't know. I think it's just a stroke of luck, and the fact that people notice what I do. I mean, a parallel, when I was selected as the director of IIM Indore, again, people said that I was relatively young for this position. Academically speaking, I'm not young. I probably look younger than what I am, but still they thought that in the academic world I was too young. kind of thing. I did not have the required number of experiences, but clearly there were others who looked at what my leadership potential could have been. And I think that is what had happened over there, that the editor of that newspaper, he had heard me speaking in one of the events. And I've always been a passionate speaker. One, two, I speak only what I practice. So I don't give the gyan which I don't practice in my own life. And three, I don't know the appropriate word for it, but people have told me that I'm very approachable, in the sense, if anybody writes to me or anybody calls me up, I do respond. And I very quickly tell them whether I can help them or not. So I don't dilly-dally, I don't refuse to take calls, and it really doesn't matter. I'm very comfortable with a person, who's probably begging on the street to the whoever, the world's president or whoever the person may be. I'm very comfortable talking to all kinds of people. And I think I have that ability of speaking their language. I make them comfortable as well, or they make me comfortable, so that I can open up to people from all kinds of backgrounds. And this editor noticed this, and he said, would you want to do this? And initially, even I was skeptical that if I did have the knowledge. Of course, I'm a voracious reader, so I read books like crazy. I consume them, in fact, and I do talk to a lot of people. So I have that kind of an experience, perhaps more than my peer group, etc. But nonetheless, it was he who gave me this opportunity. And once I started writing and answering those questions, then the feedback that he got was fantastic. And I think that's what prompted me to continue doing that. And in fact, even when I started my own website at some point of time, of course, I'm not able to give so much time to it. One of the essential features of that, and the only dynamic element, was a hyperlink called Ask Himanshu Rai. Right. Where again, people could ask me questions and I would respond to them. And again, the feedback that I got in this was good. So I think serendipity, good people coming my way, and opportunities.
So very interesting, because I did go to your website and I saw the Ask Himanshu Rai link, and I was going through the comments, and I was surprised. Somebody had asked about weight loss, weight gain, etc., and I sort of saw your answers. And it really struck me as very interesting that you're willing to be that accessible, and I found that very interesting. I was very glad that you brought this up, and I wish there were more questions there, because it looks like people have moved on from sort of asking questions. But that being said, you being this approachable, you're willing to talk to others. I really want to see how it sort of came into being. Were you always like this?
I was. So I come from a very, very humble background, Alvin. I come from a very poor family. My father was the first person to come out of the village and start a job as a supervisor in a factory in Kanpur. And he became an officer a couple of years before his retirement. My mother's family was displaced from Pakistan, and they came to India post-partition. And they grew up, nine of them, 7 brothers, sisters, and my nana nani, in a 2-bedroom thing. There was no drawing room, so one drawing room was converted into a bedroom. So 9 people there. And even when I was growing up, it was my brother and I, and there was always a cousin or someone who would be staying with us, because my parents would be supporting the education. So 5 people in 1 room, 2 room is how I grew up. And therefore, however, my parents always made sure that I got the best of everything, that I got the best of the education. I went to the school that they could not afford. So my father would work overtime. My mother would do tuitions, apart from, doing her own studies, etc., etc. So I come from a place where I have all reasons to be very, very humble. And one of the things, therefore, I have always, even as a child, I tried to help anybody who asked me to the extent I could. So if somebody and predominantly people would want my help in academic matters, or probably writing some stuff for them. They would be participating in a debate where I was not participating, then they would ask me to help them with the points, etc. Subsequently. And so that is one aspect of it. The second aspect of it is, all of this also made me very, very sensitive about certain issues. So for example, I'm very sensitive about certain women related issues. because of things that I saw around me. I'm very sensitive about children-related issues. I'm very sensitive about the way people talk to those who cannot do anything for them. So this is something that I'm very sensitive about, given my own upbringing and given the circumstances that I saw. And I think that somewhere makes me always be available for people and do what I can possibly. And there are times where I tell people that, look, I will not be able to help you in this particular thing. And they said the very fact that you gave us time and listened to us is kind of good enough. So I would say my own personal circumstances made me this.
So, I'm very rarely do people get started into meditation early. What struck me about your Tata story was that even by that time, you were sort of in the process of meditation. And then I think the mountains called out to you. So how and when did you get into meditating? Because it's not something people do at a very early age. You seem to have done a lot of things that people tend to do much later in life. You seem to have done them very early. So meditation stands out for me.
So again, that comes from that comes from my family background. So my mother is a Sanskrit scholar, and my mother's nana, maternal grandfather, right? So my mother's maternal grandfather, Pandit Kishanlal Sharma, he was the head priest of a temple in Katasraj in Pakistan, and also used to run a Sanskrit Gurukul for girls. And therefore, Sanskrit is my first language. I speak Sanskrit. And my mother was my mother was 16 when she had me, 16 and a half when she had me. She got married at 15 and a half. And then she did her BA, B.Ed, MA, M.Ed, PhD, D.Lit, all of it in Sanskrit. So that was one. And second, my parents are Arya Samajis, which means that they do daily yajna. And since they used to do daily yajna, I used to kind of hang around. And since I had all Sanskrit books around me, I ended up reading all the scriptures. And I'm talking about not Ramayana and Mahabharata, but I'm talking about hardcore scriptures like the Darshans, Upanishads, and Ved at a very early age. And as I said, I've always been extremely curious, and I used to have a very good memory. At one point of time, I have memorized most of the Ved mantras. So, when you read that kind of stuff, you automatically get into that phase. And yoga was something which was a part of my life as a child itself. So I would practice yoga, and that led to, also practicing meditation or getting into the meditative mode.
Okay, that is very interesting. You mentioned having, lived in that environment where, you just had a couple of rooms and you had so many people there. I'm assuming you had a lot of siblings, and there was a lot of
one sibling. I just have a younger sibling, but there was always a cousin or an
right.
who would be staying with us and studying. Because as I said, that I don't come from that kind of family. So since my parents got elevated a little in their economic status, so then they supported some of the cousins, etc.
Okay, all right, got that. I think now that I have an idea as to sort of how you sort of grew up, maybe a little bit. So I'm going to now move to management education. And now, having this context in mind, it gives me a sense as to how you've sort of led your life. Can you tell me how your own personal life has inspired the kind of work you're doing with institutions right now?
So, as I said, that because I'm very sensitive to certain issues, one of the things that I have tried to do in the institutions that I've worked in is that I've tried to persuade people to look at their mission to not just create and disseminate knowledge, but also practice that knowledge. Because this is something that I've found as not happening in the institutions that I've been a part of. Management institutions don't manage themselves very well. They teach marketing, they hire an external marketing agency to market themselves and to brand themselves. To me, this doesn't make sense. An engineering institution has massive engineering problems which are recurrent in nature. Now, that to me is very odd. So one of the things that I've tried to do, because of my personal thing about practicing what I preach to the extent I possibly can, otherwise I said I don't preach about it. So I've tried to do that at IIM Indore, for example. we are practicing the principles of management. It's a well-managed campus. So when you come to the campus, you will see that there is a lot of greenery, the systems are in place, you get very, very positive vibes. So that is one way. The second, as you mentioned, that I have a spiritual bent without being religious, I think that also spills over to my workplace. So I try to create those spaces where people can congregate, where people can reflect, where people can introspect. And I try to create even physical spaces. So for example, at IIM Indore, we have created 3 gardens. One is called the spiritual garden, the other is called the Zen garden, the third is called the sound garden. So now these spaces invite people to themselves. And in these spaces, you can't eat and you can't use your phone. So you don't have a choice but to either have nice, polite conversations with each other or to sit with yourself and introspect. So I think that is the second way in which my own personality displays itself. And third is this thing about responsibility. I've always believed in taking responsibility for my actions, and I've always been the first one to apologize if I've messed up somewhere. I don't believe in dwelling over failures, dwelling over mistakes. I acknowledge, I fold my hands, apologize, and I move on. So that is another culture that I'm trying to bring in over here, and in other places that I've worked in. That by all means make mistakes, and you will get more opportunities. In fact, somebody who's made a mistake, I would love to have that person around because that person will not repeat that mistake. But don't violate any moral value. Don't violate any ethical value. Don't violate the principles of the institution that you're a part of. That is completely inexcusable. So I think that is another thing that I bring, and therefore more people are willing to experiment. More people come to me, and that added to, like you said, I'm very approachable. So even a junior level staff would not hesitate to walk up to me and give me a suggestion. And if I would find merit in that suggestion, I would implement it and give the person a due credit, etc. So I think these are the 2-3 ways where my own personality is coming into my workplace.
Got it. So I'm going to jump onto the other side. Currently there is this very interesting jump that business schools are taking with respect to technology. I mean, AI wasn't a big deal and now is sort of a big deal. It's sort of a buzzword. And so, what's your view on the role of innovation and technology right now, and how is it shaping business education and what you're doing at IIM Indore?
So, innovation and technology have been there ever since, in some or the other form. They have, obviously, what we have seen in the last 10 years is simply that the pace has increased big time for both. Without innovation, you can't build an institution. But coming specifically to educational institutions, I think there have been innovations in programs, the kind of programs that institutes are offering, the courses within those programs, and then, of course, the pedagogies. And one of the things that I realize is that we are, if you put the flagship programs on the side for a minute, then most of the people are talking about this lifelong learning. And what I do see is that there is a genuine interest in people to learn something more. Possibly COVID is one of the reasons, because during COVID, people were at home. They had more time, perhaps, and more opportunities. And they also wanted to make sure that they were updated to live in the post-COVID world, or whatever it is that they imagined at that point of time. And therefore, everyone was trying to do some course. And therefore, I think what we have moved on, what we are moving towards in an auto-directed world, where people are going to decide what they wish to learn, when they wish to learn, where they wish to learn, and how they wish to learn. And therefore, institutions, particularly institutions of higher education, have to gear themselves up to make sure that they are catering to this concept of lifelong learning. And the other thing is that, technology plays an important part in each of these innovations, because you can actually create experiences using technology. So, for example, if somebody wants to learn in an online mode, you obviously need to have a technology. If somebody wants to learn in a hybrid mode, that, look, I can come, but maybe not every day, but I'll come for 2 days in a week. Then you have to create, you have to use technology for hybrid mode. The third thing, for example, where I've found it very fascinating, and this is the reason why I love learning from others, looking at the best practices of other schools, etc. So there is a business school which has created a virtual image, a digital campus, which means using virtual reality, you can actually go through the entire campus. You can actually open doors and get inside and see all of that. Now, that's a wonderful thing, because one of the things that we face, Indian business schools face, is that our exchange programs are completely skewed. We have more people going out, but we have very few coming in. And one of the reasons is that we haven't been able to dispel the notions that people have about our country, even today. It's getting better, but it's still not dispelled. A lot of people still think that we do not have basic infrastructure, the basic facilities, etc. Now, if we can use this technology of virtual reality and augmented reality, we can actually create experiences for international partners, for international prospective students, exchange students, etc. So big role. Now, coming specifically to IIM Indore, what we have done is we have created programs which are very, very innovative. So, NEP also, when NEP was talking about multidisciplinary, we had started this journey probably 9 years before that, because in 2011 we created our IPM program. An IPM program is a multidisciplinary program at the undergraduate level. But at IIM Indore, we try to stay several paces ahead in terms of making sure that we also try and anticipate the needs of the future. So, for example, this program that we have created, a joint degree program with IIT Indore on Masters of Science in Data Science and Management. Now, that is something which is very, very innovative, because we are combining two great institutions. We are combining the faculty of two great institutions. We are combining the learning elements of two great institutions and offering this in an online mode with 2 campus modules, one in IIT and one at IIM. Another program that we created was an executive doctoral program in management and governance, which was specifically for Indian Administrative Services officers and the Indian Army officers. So therefore, what we are looking at is how can we solve the problems of public systems and public administration and defense by doing some deep diving through a PhD program. So these are some of the, and I can talk about a whole lot of certificate programs that we have created, which are very cutting edge, very innovative, and are doing very, very well. Just to give you an idea, I don't know whether you would want to mention it or not. In 2019, that is when I had come in, our executive education revenue was 17 crores. This year we have clocked 77 crores. That's 4.5 times. And simply because we have gone contextual, we have done a lot of innovative programs that we have created, and there's a market for that. Now, within programs, as I said, that we have courses which are very good, the classrooms that are very good. So we have hybrid classrooms, we have almost a dozen online studios. We have also now created an asynchronous studio so that we can create asynchronous material. So we are using all the technology that we have in terms of the infrastructure. Not just that, we are trying to also use technology in doing things which go beyond the classroom. So we're trying to solve some of the wicked problems in the society by using technology, some of which is ours, some of which is open source, like say Google Satellite Image. And by doing an analysis through Google Satellite Images, we are providing a traffic solution to the city of Indore, one among the many things that I'm talking about. So the other very interesting thing that I've learned from other people is this concept of digital professor. So if you can't get an international faculty to come here, you can have the international faculty take an entire course in the online way and call them digital professors, digital faculty. So that's another innovative, not just a nomenclature, but a thought process. Particularly, for example, if I'll talk about some of the courses. For example, doing business in India. Now, what I'm telling my international partners is that let's talk about doing business in India. Let me offer this course, and my faculty will offer it from here, because the advantage is that I can also get some people from the business to be a part of the delivery of that course. Likewise, I had a delegation from HSC University, St. Petersburg yesterday from Russia, and they said we would be delighted to offer a course of doing business in Russia. and where the professor can sit in Russia and also bring some industry people and offer this kind of a course. So these are some of the innovations where we are using technology as an enabler. And then pedagogy, of course. I mean, pedagogically, obviously COVID forced us to accelerate the advancements of technology in pedagogy, but we are using more and more of online as an enabler before, after the course kind of thing, creating asynchronous material. So a whole lot of stuff going on there.
So very interesting that in 2019, and sort of I think COVID hit immediately after that. And it was during those timeframes that you've been able to accelerate on the executive education. So would you like to add some more color as to how did you structurally pull that off? Because you've seen, as you said, a 4x, more than a 4x growth in revenue.
So, Alvin, one of the things that my mountaineering has given me is that I don't know what it is, but I have a heightened sense of intuition. And I think mountaineers somehow get it. When you do a lot of it, you somehow can anticipate issues, you somehow can anticipate problems, you can see the challenges, and you're always very well prepared. So what I do is adventure, not risk. And therefore, when I look at IIM Indore as an institution, I also look at not just doing what traditionally the directors are doing, but also look at the P&L and make sure that we have a very healthy balance sheet. And since we are going for a massive expansion project, I needed to look at the finances as well. And therefore, to give you an example, though that is not a direct answer to your question, but I'll directly answer it as well. When the lockdown was being anticipated, it was a lockdown for a week. And they said, we are going to lock down from tomorrow or day after or whatever. I told my chief officer administration to stock up for 3 months. And he said, it's just a week lockdown, sir. Why do we need to do all of that? I said, I don't know, but I have this hunch that this is going to go long. And though it did not go for 90 days, but it went for 67 days. But thankfully, we were prepared for 90 days. Now, why I did it, I don't know. But I had that intuitive thought that this is not what it seems on the face of it. And my chief administrative officer now almost considers me as a seer, that you got some magical whatever because you can anticipate. Now, I keep telling him that it's just my mountaineering survival instinct which is in there. So likewise, the moment COVID happened, I realized, because I realized that this damn virus was a weird one and possibly is going to take a bigger toll. I had to think about what's going to happen, because suddenly our revenues from offline were zero. And therefore, we started thinking. So I've worked with my team. And then, of course, I have amazing people over here, my faculty members, who very quickly kind of came up with ideas. We did a quick market survey. And one of the things that I've always tried to do is to learn from wherever I have gone. It doesn't matter whether it's a corporate world or an institution. But I've always picked up things from others. So I keep telling people that I'm like a sponge. I like, suck information out of you. I suck the knowledge out of you. And I knew what the good practices were, what my fellow deans across the world were doing. So very quickly, we started talking to partners. And I think one of the things that I can claim is a strength of mine is super quick decision making. So I make decisions very quickly, yes or no, whichever ways. So even with our partners, the edtech partners, etc., whose platforms we were using at that point of time, I would make very quick decisions. Number one, I would cut through the bureaucracy, and we would launch programs and give them nice but workable stretch but workable targets. And my team would obviously put in a lot of hard work. And fortunately, since I used to do a lot of training, I had some personal contacts as well. So I would just reach out to my network, and therefore we managed to turn around this thing very, very quickly. I mean, we made massive progresses, doubling it the first time, and then tripling it the next time, and then 4.5 times this time. So that was a second element, which was reaching out to the right people and making decisions very, very quickly. And the third, which I have to put on record, is that I have a super supportive board. I've been extremely fortunate that my board has always kind of let me do whatever I've wanted to. So I've never been questioned by my board as to why do you do things this way, or why did you say no there. etc., etc. They've supported me to the hilt, and that's a big thing, because if you're always thinking that, hey, somebody's looking over my shoulder, and you're always looking over your shoulder, then you can't really work. In fact, the only suggestion that I have gotten from my board is that to please be a little slow, please be a little slow. Others also need to catch up, because I did realize that it was a problem. I used to take so many things on my plate that I would barely get the time for myself, but I enjoyed it. So I think combination of these 3-4 things is how we managed to pivot.
So one of the biggest challenges, and this is a global challenge for all deans and directors, they say that, while we are educational institutions, the slowest moving part of an educational institutions are the professors themselves, in terms of, upgrading themselves or being open to new things. So over the last few years, how have you managed the culture within the institution and managed to get work done at this pace?
I've always said that it is gentle persuasion that I use. And I allow people to interpret it in any way that they wish to. I believe in, having many conversations. However, I also believe in making a decision at the end of the conversation. So, for example, like we have these mandatory academic council meets where we discuss these are the things that we are going to do. And I try to listen to everyone and try to address, if at all, there are any doubts or any issues, etc. But one of the things that I've always done is that at the end of the academic council, I have given a decision. And fortunately, I have a wonderful set of faculty members who, while they argue during the academic council, but once a decision has been made, they follow that decision. So that is one of the things that I have done. The second thing is that we are also fortunate that we have a lot of younger faculty who is far more open to changes, etc. And therefore, I've tried to build a younger team of leaders as well. So, for example, making an associate professor a dean, which is normally not done in an IIM. You have a full professor as a dean. But like I said, if I was selected as the director, despite not having the number of years that one would expect a director to have, it spills over to the way I make my decisions as well. So that was second part, which is the fortunate part. And the third part is communication. We have, my team and I, we communicate very often. So for example, even in COVID, we were perhaps the only campus which had less than 25 people infected at any given point of time. The numbers never went off. And obviously it was my team that worked very hard. We had multiple channels of communication. So I had made a WhatsApp group of administration and the medical center, one WhatsApp group of the deans, one WhatsApp group of the chairs, one WhatsApp group for executive education. And we were constantly there, talking about exchanging ideas, etc. So when there is so much of involvement and conversation, I think people start getting impacted. And the fourth thing is that I don't look back. I don't hold grudges and I don't look back. So if there's somebody who said that, I don't want to do it, but it doesn't matter. So I just move on. And I'm absolutely fine taking a no for an answer from somebody, so long as it is just, a minuscule lot, a minor lot which says no to some new idea or refuses change. I'm absolutely fine with it, because I do see their perspective as well. If somebody's been very comfortable for a very, very long time, it is a difficult decision to come out of your discomfort. But I think with feedback and over time, and when they saw other colleagues do it with ease. So for example, when we pivoted to online education, we also made sure that we were giving them training simultaneously as to how to actually engage in online communication, made some ambassadors, some of them who were very good in online teaching. So they became ambassadors. I requested my other faculty members to sit in their classroom or to sit in their online studio, etc., and see how they were doing. And also, making some kind of not just a branding thing, but a coherence in the way we do things. So for example, this backdrop that you see, this is a backdrop which the entire institute will use for any official meeting, necessarily. Likewise, if you see the PPTs that we have, there's a template that we created, because I said it has to be a uniform message that goes through. This backdrop says something. Likewise, the way we design the PPT, it says something. So when people see these kind of initiatives, I think after some time, even though they may have some apprehensions, they do see the value in it. And as I said, if one or two of them don't, then that's fine. That's par for the course.
I hear you. I think that's a very good perspective. Very interesting that usually government institutions are known to be fairly restrictive in changes which are not the norm. So in one hand, you've also been able to elevate somebody from an associate professor to a dean. And it's very interesting that you're doing whatever it requires to move the institution forward. I think, and I think that's a very interesting approach. So according to you, in your hierarchy, who comes first? Is it the institution, professors? How do you, when you're sort of taking a decision, you're saying, well, what is driving you? What are the top 2 or 3, areas that you keep in mind before you sort of check off on that decision?
So I'm driven completely by the mission of the institute, and this is something that I've been telling my faculty right from day one, that the mission of the institute is what we all work for. Because earlier IIMs used to take a lot of pride in saying we are a faculty-driven institute, and I said no, neither are we nor should we be, because that somehow places faculty in a far more exalted position. Not that they don't deserve to be there, but what it also simultaneously does is it underplays the importance of other stakeholders. My staff are equally contributing. I mean, they're the ones who do a lot of hard work. They make sure that my faculty deliver. I mean, imagine if my staff were not to make the classrooms in the shape that they ought to be for my faculty to come in. Nothing is going to happen. If my staff were to not treat the executive education participants who come in over here well, no matter how great you might teach them, they will not have a very good experience. The students bring in so much of value to the institution. They are the ones who are the backbone of the institution. My alumni bring so much of value. And therefore, I said that we have to be a mission-driven institute. And our mission is defined by these 3 terms: contextually relevant, world-class academic standards, and socially conscious. And these are the 3 drivers which will drive every activity that we do. And all of us, staff, faculty, students, alumni, us, me, all of us will work towards that mission. So that is what drives me. One. The second thing that I keep in my mind is that, are we adding value to something? Are we adding value to a human being? Are we adding value to the environment? Are we adding value to the society? Are we adding value to the community? And that box has to be checked for me to take any new kind of an action. And the third thing is it in line with our value system? And that is something that is extremely important to me. Again, I don't want you to write it, but one of the things that I keep saying on just about every occasion when I give a public speech is that I can tolerate a staff not talking properly to a faculty, but I will not tolerate a faculty not talking properly to a staff. That downward power, it has to play out far better because the responsibility is higher on your side. So I'm not saying I've succeeded completely. At least the messaging is very, very clear that this is the value system that I want to install. This is the kind of a culture that I wish to develop over here, where everyone treats everyone else with dignity. And nobody has the right to take away dignity from anybody. So that is the third thing that drives the decisions that I take.
Very interesting and very well thought out answer. I really loved your framework, and I think it's a great way to explain to the faculty as well. It has to make consistent sense as well. So fantastic. So I when I asked my initial question about when you spoke about international students coming in, you mentioned that a lot of our students go out, but a lot of their students are not coming in. So I want to ask you, what is it that India should do to be on the global map so that a lot more students consider coming to India?
So, one thing that we need to do urgently is to improve our infrastructure, because that seems to be something that everyone talks about. I'm not saying that we'll be able to provide running water in the next 2 years, 3 years or some such thing. But, we have to look at those priorities that can we make our infrastructure world class so far as the country is concerned. The second thing is we also need to create the narrative, because right now, although as I said that there has been a change in the narrative so far as our country is concerned about what kind of country are we, what do we have to offer, but I think we still need to build a stronger narrative that we are the country that is not just the biggest market right now, but we are also the country which is the biggest resource of talent. And therefore, that narrative has to shift from being a market, being just a market, to also being a country which has the resource, the skill resource. And for that, we also need to make sure that we are also investing very heavily on R&D and skill capacity development. The third element I think that we need is decisive leadership at all fronts, which means decisive leadership not just at the level of the country or the state, but even decisive leadership at the local administration level, decisive leadership in institutions, in the universities, etc. The fourth thing that I would think of is that, we have to, one of the things that I have started doing is that, if you can't come here for an entire term, come here for 2 weeks and let me curate your experience. Let me give you a curated experience. So you don't have to study in India, you study India. So I've taken that in out. You just study India, you study who we are. And that's a very useful thing to do with a bunch of people who come from another country, because it also tells you as to how do they see you. So while they, we would like to have them come and see us, we would also like to see them as to what do they feel about us? How do they see us, not just in terms of the people and the landmass, etc., but the general perception about, the value system that this country kind of talks about. And the fourth thing that I think we need to do as a country is, again, something that we have done, talking about the soft power that we have, for example, the yoga, etc., is to again curate experiences which are very, very inclusive. And by that, what I mean is that if we can have more homestays which are available, if we can cut down on the bureaucratic, red tapeism when it comes to, say, the processes, the visa processes, the kind of permissions that are needed, etc., and speed up our systems. Those are the few things that are going to help, and we are doing them. The only thing is we need to do them consistently.
So moving a little bit to academics, right? I mean, the whole act of what's happening inside a business school. So currently there is a global debate around AI versus, how do professors deal with AI, the kind of assignments that need to be now given to students. And is this a fad? There were so many technological other buzzwords that have come in and left. But this has become so accessible that now I see globally professors firstly feeding their own questions to ChatGPT before releasing it to students. And so there are a wide range of views around it. One is philosophical views and the practical aspects of grading. So what are your views on the entire spectrum of this topic of AI, currently what students are doing and how you are either integrating in your curriculum?
So AI to me is an enabler, and everything that is related to artificial intelligence. But we need to understand that while we may use artificial intelligence, the learning has to be real, which means, even when you say online classes, the learning is again offline, in the sense that you're learning real skills, you're developing real attitudes, and you're gaining real knowledge. So, and within AI, if you're talking about ChatGPT, or for that matter, any generative pre-programmed thingy, today it's chat, now we'll be talking about audio and video, etc., etc. It's a fact. It's here. So, initially, I know in my own academic council, there was debate, should we allow ChatGPT or should we not allow ChatGPT? Should we ban ChatGPT? And I was of the opinion that it's almost like, debate 50 years back saying, should we allow calculators or should we not allow? But calculator is there. You can't do anything about it. You can't ask people to go back to the log table because calculators have made life simpler. When the computers came, they made computing simpler. Now you have supercomputers, which make supercomputing simpler. So ChatGPT is there. Now, the thing that you need to look at is how do you use ChatGPT for bettering the classroom lessons that you have. One. Two, now that you have ChatGPT, for example, let's say Google, when Google came in, a lot of people rude and ranted about it, saying that, oh, now who needs people? Google has all the answers. Google does not have the answers. Google collates information which is available out there. And therefore, we need to also curate Google. Just like we need to curate Wikipedia, we need to curate Google as well. And of course, Google also is doing its own stuff, and Google has improved massively. It does check its own sources, so on and so forth. So again, something that you will get out of ChatGPT is not going to be necessarily the correct answer, because it's simply going to trawl the available open sources that it has and then provide you with an answer. So I think we should embrace technology, be it artificial intelligence and ChatGPT. We should also try to see as to how can we use it to our advantage. Like, for example, when a lot of these asynchronous programs came in, a lot of people poo-pooed them that, asynchronous, who wants to do this, etc., etc. But then we realized that asynchronous programs are very useful for pre-learning or pre-classroom learning or post-classroom learning. Now, that the entire idea of a flipped classroom kind of thing. So why not use it to your advantage? And likewise, I think we need to use it to our advantage. And the third thing is that we have always said that our assessment systems have to assess the capabilities of people. This is something that I truly believe. In fact, in one of the interviews, when I said that the meaning of merit is not to clear an exam, but to select the right people for whatever the mission of your institution is. And that's how I was explaining as to why do we give extra marks for diversity, because I said you need a diverse classroom. It's an imperative given the mission that we have of producing responsible leaders who make equitable and inclusive decisions. You can't have a classroom of 90% male engineers making inclusive decisions. It's impossible. So likewise, assessment is not to grade students. The aim of the assessment is to tell people what they are good at. And therefore, we must always use multiple modes of assessment. But ChatGPT has, I think, once again, accelerated that process of thinking, that how do I assess in a way so that I know what the person knows, not what the person can do with, and not just what the person can do with things that the person can find out. So therefore, increased focus on individualized assessment rather than one size fits all kind of an assessment. Oral vivas, where you actually have a conversation instead of asking for a written submission, etc. So all of those things are now coming in. So I believe that going ahead, it's not even a choice. People will have to adopt and then adapt themselves to make sure that they make the best use of it.
So there is this general. Are you still taking any classes right now? I was always curious. Right?
Negotiation. Yeah, I half a credit, but yeah, I can't leave teaching.
You can't leave teaching. So very interestingly, at least I've not heard this from India as yet, but at least globally, the sense is that students are not nowadays willing to work as hard. I've been speaking to professors and they say, during our times, a 40-page case study was the norm, and we'd expect them to read it and come to class, and they would. But nowadays, the expectation, even from a student, is that, I don't think we can do a 40-page. Give us something that's smaller. And so there is also this shift happening where a lot of these professors are not extremely happy, but they're also making that shift because that's sort of the need of the hour. Do you see something of that sort happening in our educational landscape? And if so, how are you dealing with that?
Alvin, I disagree. I disagree with this oft stated thing that previous generation used to work harder, previous generation was this, previous generation was that. I mean, I was talking to somebody and he said, this generation sits with the mobile phone all the time. I said, yeah, because this generation got the mobile phone. If you had the mobile phone, you would have also sat with it. It makes a lot of sense sitting with the mobile phone because it makes life very, very easy. So comparing your circumstances of the yesteryears and then judging somebody today when the circumstances themselves are very, very different is, to me, very, very unfair. So I think every generation has their own challenges. Every generation does what is appropriate for that generation. That does not make any generation better than the other. So that is one. Two, have people lost the habit of reading? Again, my answer is no. In fact, I would stick my neck out and say we have lost the art of writing good stuff. And that is why people are not reading. Where are the classics? There are no classics. So if the authors themselves are using ChatGPT and Google to write their own stuff, why would anybody want to read that? And if you have something great, people will read that. Number three, even the way people consume things change. For example, when Kindle came, people talked about the demise of books. No, books did not die. I would still read a P.G. Wodehouse in the hard copy format. I would not like to read P.G. Wodehouse on the Kindle because somehow it does not give me the same feeling, same vibe unless I'm touching, pages and smelling the pages, etc. So it did not die. TV did not kill the newspaper. OTT is not killing the TV. Everyone's just creating their own niche spaces. Now, likewise, for example, if you say that people do not have the younger generation does not have a great attention span, why is the younger generation binge watching a GOT or a Mirzapur or a Patal Lok or an Office or a Suits, etc.? They are binge watching it, which means that they do have an attention span. The only thing is we have to create something which is as good as that. And which is why you will see that some of the good business schools have now started creating audiovisual cases. So you may have a 1-pager or a 2-pager, but there's a visual. For example, I know of one audiovisual case of Harvard, which is on that Hamara 2611 Vanjo incident, Tajwala incident. And they've created a audiovisual case. So I think instead of kind of pointing out what's wrong with the world, today's world and the younger generation, we need to find out how do we capture their imagination? Can we create material? So when I go to my negotiation class, I don't see this problem. And I'm not saying that I'm the only great teacher on this planet Earth, but I don't see that problem because people find the class very interesting. People find the cases that I take very interesting, and then I develop my own simulations, which they find very, very interesting. So I think if you work hard and if you try to understand what will people find interesting as well as useful, merely looking at usefulness is a mistake that we have done as a teaching fraternity without looking at the interesting part of it. So I think you have to combine interesting with useful.
So, there was immediately after COVID, there was this rise of, I would say, superstar entertaining teachers, because they looked great on camera. They had the charisma to even engage students. Did you also feel that offline professors needed to imbibe some of that to make sure that their classes are going to stay interesting and relevant?
Absolutely. Classroom teaching, whether it is on camera or whether it is in front of physical people, is also about performance. And by performance, I don't mean that you're doing some kind of an acting, but again, as I said, you have to practice what you preach. So if you talk about communication and the elements of communication, and you talk about the Aristotelian rhetoric of ethos, pathos, and logos, that you have to sound passionate about what you're teaching. And if you are looking dull in the classroom, then obviously that dullness, simply goes on and rubs on to the people who are listening to you. So you have to sound passionate. And in fact, you should be teaching only that stuff that you're passionate about. So the passion comes naturally and you don't have to act it out. And particularly on the camera, it's forget looking good and doing things in a more exaggerated way. I have seen some faculty, that throughout the class, you would only see the inside of their nostrils, or throughout the class, you would only see, the bald pate of the head because they didn't even figure the camera out, etc. Now, clearly that kind of a class will not work. And you have to work on that post-COVID all the more so because you didn't have a choice. And a lot of now executive education programs are at least run in that mode. So I think, it's an imperative. That when you say performance, but for performance, what I mean is good communication, passionate communication, and also looking interested in the subject that you're talking.
Okay, I hear you, and I hope that this message goes out to a lot of other professors who will be watching this, because you're right. Pretty much in my entire career, I can remember those 4 or 5 professors who made things interesting, who put in the effort, to sort of, push the boundary and really cared about, not about what is comfortable for them, but how to make this, learning accessible and interesting so that it sort of, it forever stays with you. So thank you for that line. It really resonates with me. So, tell me about this, right? How do you separate yourself from the other IIMs, according to you? Those 2 or 3 things that allows you to say that, hey, listen, these are 3 places where we sort of stand out or are different.
So I would talk about 3 things, because this is a question I've answered to all the accreditation bodies that have come over here. That is the question. How do you separate yourself from the rest of your competition, etc.? I think the biggest thing that IIM Indore is now known for is nation building. We have very actively participated in solving those very large problems of the country. We're working a lot with governments at different levels, and we are working in a very apolitical manner, which means, initially, for example, when I started doing some work in UP, people said, hey, why are we doing stuff in UP and why not just in MP? And I had to tell them, we are not Indore Institute of Management or MP Institute of Management. We are an Indian Institute of Management. So the entire country is where we need to look at. We are the independent verification agency of 4 large government schemes. And therefore, we are giving them quick feedback as to how they can improve both the content of the scheme and the implementation of the schemes. We are trying to work with different state governments to improve their processes, irrespective of the power equation as to who's in power, whether it is the party in the center or some regional party or some such thing. So I think that constant contribution towards nation building is something, reaching out to the international audience and now speaking about the global south. So now every time I'm called, and this itself is a change, that earlier we used to call people from outside. Now it is the outside universities who want to visit IIM Indore. And they're coming simply because of the work that we are doing is going out, and they say, hey, they're doing very big things. They don't talk about it. In fact, one of the accreditation agencies said, the kind of things that you people are doing, why aren't you talking about it? And I said, we didn't realize that we need to talk more than what we are. But on every Dean's conference, now IIM Indore is invited to talk about what it is doing in terms of its societal impact, because those stories are all over the world. So I think nation building would be one. Second is solving problems. So and this is very interesting as well, because, I was being in one of the media interactions, somebody said, so what do you want IIM Indore to be known for? So I said, I want IIM Indore to be known for solving problems. So bring us a problem and we will give you a solution. So for example, the city of Indore reached out and said, look, traffic is a mess. Can you solve that? I said, yeah, 100 days we'll solve this problem. The police came to us and said, beat policing is a problem. We want to improve beat policing. Can you do that? Said, yes, we will solve this problem. Response time, UP police came and asked us, can you help us with this? We said, yes, we'll solve this problem. Then I got an email from a guy saying, look, I'm having some relationship issues. Can you solve my problem? And I was like, well, that's not what I meant, but nonetheless, let me give you some advice. So very interesting, but I think that's what IIM Indore does, solves problems. And the third thing is the third element of our mission statement. Like I said, socially conscious. We are socially conscious. So, and by virtue of that, what I mean is that we are doing a lot of things to what we have identified as 5 wicked problems, where IIM Indore has the competence to contribute. One is income inequality. So we are trying to solve that by working on this program that some of the states have, which is called One District, One Product, where we work with the artisans and help them in increasing in making their livelihood better, increasing their incomes, as well as increasing their competence. Similarly, we are working within that on financial literacy for women, because women, till such time that women's contribution is also counted in our economy, that inequality will not go away. So therefore, these 2. The second is we are looking at rural challenges. And IIM Indore has this amazing program called Rural Engagement Program, where all our students go and live in the villages for 1 week. So earlier they used to talk to the villagers over phone and try to find out their problems. And I said, no, not at all. unless you live, you will not be able to experience. I mean, listening from a person that he or she has to walk half a kilometer to fetch potable water every day is one thing, and actually walking that half a kilometer every day and fetching a bucket of water is another thing. So the latter is what we are making people do. And then my students suggest solutions, which with the help of the district administration, we try to implement. The third is urban challenges. So challenges on infrastructure, challenges on waste management. So IIM Indore has established this Center of Excellence with a grant and aid that came from the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, which is called Anveshan, Center of Excellence on Waste Management and water, sanitation, and hygiene. So we are working on these issues, which are urban issues. Fourth is environment. So while we, as I said, we practice what we preach, so IIM Indore is a no single-use plastic campus. You can't enter or exit if you're not wearing a helmet. And everybody has to wear a helmet, whoever is on the thingy. Because first time when I took this order out, people said, okay, the pillion doesn't have to wear a helmet. I said, no, everyone has to wear a helmet. And even if you're an insider, and even here you have to wear a helmet. It's not just about the gate. Little bit of resistance, but all of it was fine. Solar energy, we use 10% of our energy comes from solar panels, despite our problems with the topography because we are on a hill. Water conservation, waste management. So we segregate waste at the household level. And what we are also doing, so this is what we are doing, and a whole lot of other things. So I don't want to bore you with the entire details, but we are also now through this Center of Excellence training other people. So that is our socially conscious part about urban challenges, and finally of environment, and finally entrepreneurial spirit. We are trying to do things to develop a spirit of entrepreneurship. And by entrepreneurship, I don't say that I want people to go and start industries, but they need to have that entrepreneurial spirit to experiment. So I'm constantly trying, IIM Indore is constantly trying to engage with the micro, small and medium enterprises, within around the place that we live in, reach out to the smaller businesses and help them incubate smaller businesses, provide mentorship. So along with the National Commission for Women and EDI, we are going to select 100 women, and then we are going to help them incubate their ideas wherever we find incubating ideas in the areas of waste management, water, sanitation, and hygiene through a seed money that we will provide through our Center of Excellence. So these three, nation building, solving problems, and socially conscious, I think these three separate IIM Indore from everyone else.
So, you were, I was reading the article about on the UN's PRME, where they sort of are also talking about IIM Indore. Now, you've had this journey where even they are commenting on your positive societal impact. Now, as a part of this journey, I would like to ask you, when you've made so much societal impact, what are some of the things that you feel are very obvious to you because you've undertaken this journey, but are not obvious to other leaders of institutions?
See, one of the things is, and you're right, I would have thought that it should be obvious to everyone, that if you have an open mind and an open heart, you can learn something from everyone. And therefore, we always be open to learn from others. The reason why I don't mind, making all those travels across the world is because I learn so much from what others are doing. And I'm not one of those people who would live in a cocoon and say whatever IIM do is the best simply because we are Indian Institutes of Management, because we have 300,000 applications and 5,000 seats and so on and so forth. No, we have to constantly evolve. So I think learning from others, learning from the best practices that you see, and acknowledging that you can get better rather than thinking that you're already the best. The second is building great teams. I mean, I can have the best of my imagination and I can have the best of the vision, but unless I build a team that is actually going to implement it, unless I have a team which is in sync with the way I think, I will not be able to achieve anything. I mean, I can keep talking about environmental initiatives, but if I don't have a great horticultural team, IIM Indore will not look the way it does. I mean, imagine now people coming in. There was an ambassador who came in, Indian Foreign Services person, and she said that, while I will give A to the city of Indore because it's actually very, very clean, I would give IIM Indore A++ because it's not just clean, but it's also green. And the moment you enter, you get a positive vibe. And all of this is courtesy the great teams that I have and who pursue everything with excellence. The third thing, which I also see a lot of people to me it's obvious, is shut out the noise. You don't have to respond always to criticism. So you know that I'm active on social media. So one of the questions I'm always asked is, you never write anything negative. And I'm like, there is so much of Kula already there. I can't make any, value addition there, but what I can add is to the positivity. And therefore I write only positive things. And people also ask me that, don't you see any negative in anyone? I said, there may be, but it's not apparent to me. I try to see the positive. And therefore, even when I'm criticized on some of the things that I do or some of the things that I don't do, I shut it out. I never respond to it. So you will never find me responding to a troll. You will never find me responding to somebody who doesn't agree with me. For example, when my book on negotiation came out, the title is Negotiation, and somebody wrote, "Hey, you could have had a better title." And I said, no, I could have had a better book. But I will try my best that the next edition that comes, I'll put my heart into it and try to make it even better. That person got very embarrassed. He called me up and said, "Look, this is not what I meant." I said, no, but I seriously think that way. That there is a scope for me to improve everything about that book, not just the title. So shutting out that noise and making sure that you're staying your way. And the fourth thing is, be value driven. So if people know that you're steady in your virtues, I'm not saying that you have to become a sadhu or something. I'm not. Neither have I claimed, nor am I going to become. But I have a certain value system. I have certain virtues to which I stick like glue. And once people know about that, they let you be. They know that this is where you have to draw the line with this person. And I think if you can do that, and I've seen people across the world, the deans who have managed to, the presidents of the universities who have managed to do that, have managed to achieve far more. So these four are my learnings.
All right. Fantastic. And so we're at the fag end. We just have two more quick questions I have. And out of this, one of them is my personal favorite, which I will keep for the last. So here's my second last question. So what, according to you, success? How should one measure success, be it personal or professional?
So, this is very interesting because I had asked this question of 600 people, leaders across the country, and it was very interesting. So I had asked them two questions. What is your definition of success? And has this definition changed over the period of years? Everyone had a definition of success, which were different. But one thing which was common was that they said that their definition has changed over the years. Earlier, it was success defined them as success meant was how were they doing vis-a-vis somebody else, their peer group, etc. Then they said they were competing with themselves, so on and so forth. To me, success is about the strides that I am making towards my vision. So my personal vision is to help people realize their true potential. Am I doing that? Am I doing that every day? That to me is success. There is no measure of it that have 100 people realize their true potential. It really doesn't matter. Even if it's one person, I believe, I have achieved success. And as an institution, to me, is the achievement of the institutional mission. Am I creating something which is contextually relevant? Am I improving the academic standards? And am I doing something which is adding to the social corpus of my institution? And am I doing this every day? That to me is a measure of success. And so long as I manage to get these, I think that to me is the definition of our success.
So you did speak about the professional side. Is there something that you would speak about on the personal side? What would success be?
The personal side is what I've talked about when I said about my own vision, which is
to it's your personal life's vision.
Potential. Yeah. So for example, I still try to take out time. I do take out time, and I write 2 columns, and that too in Hindi. And the reason I chose to write in Hindi and not in English was so that I can reach out to more people who seem to be more comfortable with the language. And I write 2 weekly columns in 2 different newspapers. One of them is on leadership, the other is on spirituality. And that to me, again, is the feedback that I get on that. And the feedback not in terms of that you wrote very well. The feedback that this made a difference to me. This is what now I have started practicing in my life, or this is what I have started doing in my life. Or, some people are unbelievably kind. And somebody wrote to me that, when she was in the hospital for a month and a half, going through a rather painful procedure, she kept reading my stuff And she said that gave me a lot of motivation because you write only positive things.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these things are to me my success. But I said I don't measure them or quantify them.
Got it. Wonderful. So, in 10 words or less, can you describe what an MBA degree is in today's world?
Yeah, so I have to count the words as well. So yes. it's according to me, it's an MBA degree is one of the keys to unlock your true potential.
Okay.
And I say that deliberately as one of the keys because there are other ways also in which you can unlock your true potential. But this is one of the keys to unlock your true potential.
All right. All right, sir. I think that wraps up all the questions I've had. Thank you so very much. You've been extremely kind, candid. Really appreciate your very thoughtful answers. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
My pleasure.
See you.
Bye-bye. See you. Take care.